We study seekers such as Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Chittaranjan Das, a creative soul from Odisha, and many others from around the world. We invite people from different fields of life to share their knowledge, wisdom, practices, to make this world more beautiful, more democratic, and more just. Yoga deserves to be one of the important spiritual discovery, I would say. And it deserves to become an integrated and universal mind-body practice in modern culture. As a great inspiring soul, Aurobindo talks about everything is yoga. You cannot live without yoga. Although when we think about Indian culture in today's globalizing world, it is not just a spiritual East and material West. Yoga is a bridging phase, I would say. Yoga is something which integrates the whole world. So it is something which is a basis of new relation of East and West. Of course, today is a day of remembering many important sadhak who cultivated the practice of yoga. I want to recall here Indra Devi, the first lady who took yoga to West, and the Hollywood from India. I want to recall Bihar School of Yoga and many ancient yogas, sutra we had, be it Patanjali to Charak. So we are living in a time of stress, anxiety, and yoga is something which is a healing aspect of our everyday life. We generally term it yoga lifestyle. So for initiating we have 3 presentations today. We'll start the presentation of Professor Anant Kumar Giri, then Archana Mohan ji, and then Professor Priya Ranjan. So I would request Professor Anant Kumar Giri to start the presentation.
Thank you so much, dear Randhir, and our dear and respected co-travelers in this discussion, and all friends co-present. Today, being the International Yoga Day, invites us to link yoga to development in multiple ways. So my presentation entitled Towards a New Yoga and Tantra of Development invites us to make these connections. First of all, as we are celebrating yoga, Prime Minister Modi in New York has said that there is no copyright on yoga, and he says that yoga belongs to the ancient tradition. And this ancient tradition of India as well as ancient tradition of humanity. The second point is that there is a link between yoga and tantra, and both in their own ways, they invite us, challenge us to establish connections in the midst of disjunctions of many kinds. So, as we are celebrating yoga today, now we would also have to link yoga to Tantra and also to science. Sri Aurobindo, in his synthesis of yoga, he begins his synthesis of yoga, this profound statement that all life is yoga. And this all life is yoga is, to begin with, we can hear this statement, read this statement as an ordinary statement of life, as everything. But once we enter in this statement, then we can realize how all life is yoga. Now, all life is yoga has multiple connotations. For example, our everyday life. Dear Randhir mentioned how our everyday life, as well as interlinked moments like mid-term moments and long-term movements today, are stressed by stresses. So, all life yogas, that at the moment that we live, this particular moment, is also a moment of yoga. And how do we realize this? Then it becomes a yoga of time. For example, our moment is part of interlinked moments. Though this particular moment has challenges, but this moment as part of a yoga of time, for example, we can realize the yoga of time in terms of yoga between moment and eternity, history and eternity, past, present, and future. So this is one dimension of all life is yoga. Secondly, today, as we realize that the whole world is talking about development, contemporary India is talking about development. You know, Prime Minister Modi, who played a key role in the announcement of International Yoga, his political slogan was development. But what is the focus of development? Today we realize that it is mainly infrastructural development. And what is the model here is China. But yoga of development means it is not just the infrastructural development, but development of human being. Human development, of course, we have a long discourse of human development, social development. I am a humble student of development studies. But in development studies also, what is focused is economic development and political empowerment. This economic development and political empowerment is morely externally driven. For example, look at our self-help groups. We know for the last 40, 50 years, starting with Grameen Bank of Bangladesh, and in India and in Odisha, where I'm speaking with you, there is the Mission Shakti and all these groups. Now this, for example, this is a kind of a vehicle of both political empowerment and economic development. But what is happening here is that, for example, the self-help groups, when they are meeting, they are mainly talking about money. And there is no link, for example, between money and learning. You know, in many discussions, I have shared this with interested participants that, you know, we are meeting as part of self-help group, but we are trying to also do just the same thing. How much money you borrowed, how much money you paid back. There is no yoga of life in the sense that money is not linked to meaning. As a result, what is happening, that with the little increase of income that is happening, where that money is being spent in mostly in expenditure of consumer goods. And these consumer goods, again, is part of a kind of a insatiable structure of desire. And we also have read that how many people from SSGs who have not been able to pay it, some of them have committed suicide. So this is just an illustration of how economic development and political empowerment, unless it is linked to a yoga of human development, self-development, then it does not really help us. Secondly, now development as it is being talked about, development practice, actors of development. And for the last, right from 1945, after the close of the Second World War, now there became a era of development. But what was precisely that it was a top-down approach. For example, development planners, development executives, even NGO activists, they related to people not with a yoga of relations, but it is a hierarchical relations. So when I talk about yoga of development, it is an invitation. For example, when a higher official is meeting people, look at, for example, a higher official from the bank or the government bureaucracy is coming to, a village and speaking with people. Now, how that relationship can be a yoga of communication. For example, when these people, development actors, are coming to development field, do they sit together? And let me also share an anecdote here, a story that I heard about President Draupadi Murmu. Let us also not forget that yesterday was President Murmu's birthday. A few days ago, I was traveling from a bus from Baripada to Bangiriposhi, and my neighbor in the bus, I spoke with him, and he is from near President Murmu's village. And he said that even when President Murmu, was a minister and high-ranking official, when she would come, she would always meet with people with a lot of respect and as equal. And one embodiment of that President Murmu, before she became president, so she would always come and sit with people on the ground and eat together. Now, this is a kind of a yoga of communication, and in a feudal society like India and Odisha, and this is a yoga of communication. And no wonder that President Murmu, when we listen to her, there is a sense of inner that really comes out. There is an authenticity of word. There is a sincerity of word. So with this, very quickly, let me invite our attention to yoga of development from Sri Aurobindo's perspective. As we know, Sri Aurobindo, who talks about all life is yoga, he invites us to realize the fivefold realities of human life: body, mind, vital, psyche, and spiritual. Now let us understand what does yoga of development means in terms of body. Now we know in both traditional world as well as the modern world, body has been subjected to a lot of indignity. There is not a dignity of the body. For example, very rarely we listen to the voice of the body. So yoga of development via yoga of body calls for a new relationship with our body. Body as a co-traveler. Similarly, when we come to vital, for example, now vital as emotions, we know how our life is full of emotions. But these emotions, unless there is a yoga of emotion, then we become victim of the darkness of emotions. Look at, for example, love. Now, love is an emotion which is the foundation of our life. But because of lack of yoga of emotions in the name of love, so much violence, so much cruelty is being perpetrated. Here, Sri Aurobindo invites us to make a distinction between devouring love, a love in the name of love where we devour each other, and a love where we fulfill each other. Similarly, therefore, this yoga of the vital in terms of development requires a new education of the vital. For example, Chittaranjan Das, in his reflection on vital education, he says that how in vital education, dramas, plays, and songs that play an important role in nurturing our emotions. And let us come to our mind, yoga of mind. We know our mind is at the root of everything. In Buddhism, it is spoken, and also in our Odia Bhagavata, Jagannath Das also talks about it. So mind is a very important factor of human existence. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, also there is reflection on Chitta Buddhi Nirodha. And when he is talking about, Patanjali is talking about Chitta Buddhi Nirodha, that means it is the withdrawal of the mind from externalities. It is a kind of a disciplining of the mind. But sometimes this Chitta Buddhi Nirodha can be understood in a narrow way as if it is a compression of mind. In a related way, my submission is that how we can realize yoga as it is Chitta Buddhi Nirodha in a creative sense, but yoga also is Chitta Buddhi Prasarana. It is expansion of mind and intellect. And how do we do that practically? For example, our mind. Now, if our mind is closed only with the knowledge that we know, then mind becomes a prisoner of itself. Look at, for example, culture, our customs, religion, for example. I'm coming from the Ratha Yatra, and Ratha Yatra is, the other day I was mentioning that all traditions have a tradition of Ratha Yatra. So in order to do that, we would have to perform a yoga of mind, and that in terms of knowledge, how do we know from other traditions? I call it a horizontal expansion. That means once we learn from the epistemic traditions of the world, then Randhir, I would conclude in 7-8 minutes. So, and then this is the horizontal yoga of mind, and the vertical yoga of the mind is go deeper. Then there is also a dimension of our mind in terms of left brain and the right brain. Now, the recent neurological development says that the distinction between the right brain and the left brain is not a rigid distinction. William Connolly, a noted political scientist, building on these recent developments, 20 years ago in 2002, he has written a book called Neuropolitics. And that in Neuropolitics is saying that while the modernist politics was a prisoner of the left and the right divide, but today the political development requires an integration of the right and the left. For example, emotion, now empathy, compassion, which seem to be in our right brain, how it needs to come to the left brain politics. So therefore today compassion is becoming a great calling in the political life. And Hillary Clinton, after she lost the presidential battle with Trump, and many of us would not disagree that it would be helpful if President Trump embodied a little bit more compassion to himself, compassion to others. And Hillary Clinton says that from that political battle, she learned how it is important to have compassion in political life. So with this, let me very quickly move to Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And in my paper that I have circulated, then there is a little bit of discussion on that, where I discuss the work of the great philosopher and yoga scholar, Christopher Chappell, and how he says that Patanjali Yoga Sutra, out of its many, many important invitations for us, is one that how do we live a life where we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. And that is very important, because many of the time, because we are unreflective, then we continue to commit the same kind of mistake. For example, there is a kind of a deep structure of violence, generational violence, and that gets reproduced. So how do we come out of that? Yoga helps us. And we know that the 8 limb foundations of yoga, ahimsa, satya, asteya, yama, and niyama, and all these things, we need to bring it into development field. For example, what is the yama and niyama development? Then quickly I come to Gandhi, who talked about Anasakti yoga and Ekadasa Vrata. And Gandhi, building on Patanjali Yoga Sutra, he, for example, brings how removal of untouchability becomes a part of Ekadasa Brata. And this removal of untouchability, Hindu-Muslim unity, interreligious dialogue, all this is part of a social and world yoga today. And Anasakti yoga is also deeply significant. That how that we would have to have a lively Anasakti yoga. It is not just detachment, but a sense of colorful detachment in the sense that I am deeply attached to the beauty of the world. At the same time, I try my best not to be a prisoner of that. Then Sri Aurobindo also talks about the practical yoga of development. And out of its many important challenges, two things I would like to say. One is Sri Aurobindo talks about an ideal yoga of social development. What is that? That there is our life consists of the individual and the collective, and how that ideal yoga of social development has to simultaneously work on the development of self, individual, including developing the atmic and the spiritual dimension of our existence, and secondly, the collective life, the social life. And that collective, which does not become a killing collectivity, but it becomes a nurturing collectivity, where the collective gives place to the blossoming and the evolutionary development of the individual. Secondly, there is a dimension of the subjective life. Sri Aurobindo makes a distinction between true subjectivity and false subjectivity. False subjectivity is egoism. True subjectivity is really the awakened self in us, which communicates with the other self. Similarly, there is a false objectivity and there is a false subjectivity. And then finally coming to Tantra. Tantra is a very deep journey, and Sri Aurobindo in his synthesis of yoga, he writes about it. And I have detailed paragraphs from Sri Aurobindo, but because of the paucity of time, let me offer a few thoughts here. One is that the whole journey with the nurturing mother, the divine mother, and here Professor Nila Bhattacharya Saxena, a deep scholar and practitioner of Tantra, I refer to her work, and she refers to Chandi Purana, how the whole earth, the world comes from the divine mother. Secondly, the celebration of the body. And thirdly, the sense of beauty. And here Abhinava Gupta's work on Saundarya, beauty. And that is also a deep journey with the mother and the Sri Aurobindo. And the kind of the celebration of life. And then, of course, when we are talking about Tantra, there has been a deformation of Tantra in terms of misuse, abuse of women, in terms of, how it has been reduced to a kind of sexual technique and all these things. But all these things then invite us that how do we can have a new yoga and Tantra of development. It has multiple connotations, and that means that how development dynamics, development discourse today needs to build upon these ways of thinking and being. Because our dominant development discourse is mainly Euro-American. And today, there is a great need for thinking about development at the conjunction of the multiple philosophies, ways of life of the world. And finally, both yoga and Tantra of development helps us in cultivating integral development. And that integral development is body, mind, spirit, and spirit, for example. Hegel has spoken about spirit. Sri Aurobindo talks about spirit. In Christian religion, there is the deep invitation of the Holy Spirit. Therefore, how do we cultivate spirit? In Hegel, spirit ended with the nation state. But today, we would have to realize spirit as a free bird, getting embodied in us. So that yoga and Tantra of development calling for integral development, and that integral development is our ongoing sadhana. In our everyday life, how do we cultivate integral development? And this chapter that I have presented is the concluding chapter of a forthcoming book of mine from Routledge called Cultivating Integral Development. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Ananta bhai, as usual. Very, very deep. And your presentation is a kind of invitation for all of us to realize that yoga is not rooted only in the sense of self, but it also invites sense of society also. So, and there the question of transformation also lies there. So in a deeper sense, yoga integrates sense of self with the sense of society. And talking about Gandhi, Ambedkar, and philosophers' quest, are very important to understand the deeper sense of self. Thank you so much for giving a very sound, philosophical, insightful presentation. Now I request Archana Mohanji, who is a practitioner of yoga. Basically, she belongs to Bihar, but she lives in UK, and she has a good understanding of how everyday health is important to deal with the challenges of everyday life. So I request Archana Mohanji to share some of her reflections on yoga.
First of all, thank you for inviting me into your space. And I don't get much time to do the slide or something, but I just thought that I would do it naturally, how I run my classes and how I talk to my clients and people about yoga. So Ananta Giri ji, what he covered was really mind-blowing, and it was really good insight into things. So I'm learning on Tantra too. So it was really nice to see that so much work is happening. For me, yoga I started as I was a strength coach. So I used to go to gym and lift weight and everything. But then suddenly, after some time, I just felt that everything is happening in the body, but I was somewhere not feeling, Anantji, when he talked about the mind. So the mind was not there. Mind was always outward focused. Mind always wanted more. So if you, I agree this very much, because all the time I have to observe what my mind wants, and what most of the time the mind doesn't want. We are listening to the outward thing, what it wants. So when you are doing that, so let's say yoga, take yoga. So now people are doing different asana, and there are a lot of, in social media, you could see a perfect asana pictures and everything. That discourage people who really want to do yoga, but they can't do yoga. Yeah. So, and there is no one in this planet who can't do yoga. Yoga is something which you could do in any form. Yeah. And people should post a picture where they are not aligned, but still they are enjoying the yoga. That's what I am experiencing with my teaching and with my clients, that it is much beyond than how you look and how asana is looking. So the integration comes from the mind. So iksha jnana shakti. So Anantaji also talked about it. So there is a desire. So it's good that if you have a desire to have a particular certain type of body, that's good that you have a desire. But if your focus becomes really outward focus, that you are really looking for, oh, okay, now I can do Bhujangasana, now I could do the headstand. So, there is no stopping, but can you just pause? So for me, yoga is like breathing. So when we breathe, we pause, and the pause has possibility. Pause has possibility. It's not the breathing. When we pause, we see that what actually we want. Why I am doing this? Yeah. So if in a class, 60 minutes, 40-minute class, if you are a beginner and you have never done yoga and you go there and you really think everyone is good, you are outwardly focused. Yoga is something which is in your mat, it is you. And the second thing which I really observed with people as a yoga teacher and people who are practicing yoga for so long, it finishes in 40 minutes. Does it finishes in 40 minutes? And yoga should be beyond the mat. So when we have closed our studio door and I am out, I saw my husband doing something or my children doing something and I'm out of my mind. Is it yoga? No. Because if that is the time when we have to really tap what is yoga, is it just the asana practice or is it the practice the way I am talking, the way I am listening to others, the way I'm not reacting, no non-dualism, no, the belief what I have cultivated. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I don't know, but I'm protecting it like this. So, yoga has much more vast experience. If we really open up, that is what I feel yoga is. Then there is a very short, in yoga classes, I see people don't do a lot of meditation. Yeah. And what does meditation do? So there is a very beautiful story. There is a practitioner called Tara Brach, and she is a mindfulness practitioner. So she was mentioning that there was a guy, he was in a supermarket and he was with his trolley full with things. And there was another lady in front of him who had a trolley, and she was chatting with that person who was billing. And he was getting annoyed because he really wanted to pay the bill and go. And he thought, what the hell? Why is she talking so much? Yeah. And he was getting really boiled up. But that person, during his posting in Afghanistan, he learned some sort of mindfulness, meditation and all. He just thought, can I just concentrate on can I just focus on my breathing at this moment? And though he was still boiling, and that's okay, that's okay. I'm angry, but I am noticing I'm angry. Yeah. Then he moved to when that lady left. So and then there was a child also in that trolley. So the lady was saying, oh, talking to the child too. So he just mentioned half-heartedly, oh, the child was so beautiful. She said, isn't it? He's my son. I lost my husband in Vietnam war, or in Afghanistan war. And that was my mom, because I have to work whole day and I could not see my son. So this is the only time when my mom come with some excuse to buy something and I could see my son. And that is meditation, where you just don't judge people for maybe they are so different. Maybe they are, people talk about religion, people talk about color, sex, everything. They might be very, very different than you. But can I just see? And then I was doing stuff with one of my teacher, and what she said was something very nice. She said, when you are judging, can you just say inside, oh, he's my brother, he's my sister, and see the change in your heart, how it changes. To me, yoga is this. And then some of the people who has never practiced yoga, and this is again I'm a storyteller, so this is a very beautiful example of a young father who went to a monk in France, and he said, teach me how to meditate. I don't know how to meditate. He said, oh, I remember you married a beautiful girl. And he said, yeah, I married. So now I have two sons. So he said, I am stay-at-home father. So I look after the children. So the monk asked, so do you enjoy looking at that? He said, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. I do everything for the children, and he said, what about those, dishes and cleaning the house? He said, I just love it because I know this movement will pass and they will grow. They will leave the house. So the monk said that you are already doing the meditation. You don't need any meditation. So a lot of people, they don't realize that they really think they can't do upside down or something, but they are yogi. They are yogi in a way. And this is where when the New York thing happened, so most of the classes were full in New York for the yoga thing. Why? Why people were looking for something like that? Because in that movement, when you are breathing and when you are moving your hands with that realization, you know, maybe my hand might not look so sophisticated and in an elegant way coming, but if I am really focusing on my hand moving like this and bringing the energy back to my heart, I can see something inside me. So, and that's why they did a research, and they felt that people during that time, because you know it was such a big event happened, 9/11, and all the yoga teacher was completely busy. It's not that they are absolutely amazing teacher or something like that, but it's something they are offering. So it is an outlet. So sometimes when we judge others, like, oh, this is happening, or go to yoga, this yoga, I don't agree with a lot of stuff like that. But at the same time, if the openness is there as a teacher, then it can make a change. During COVID, I felt that I did online yoga classes, and I felt a lot of youngsters, you know, because they were mentally, they were not meeting their friends. They were not meeting, and yoga is something like, I hardly used to do a lot of asana with them. You know, I was just talking to them and moving their body and just saying, okay, look at your breathing, pause, slow down, you know, and just witness yourself. Take a step back as a stranger and look at yourself, that why I'm doing this. Ask yourself why. The more why you ask, the more you would get the answer why you are doing it. And it's a rat race. If you are into yoga and you really think that all the asana, I'm one of those. A lot of time it happens to me that, oh, I should know this, I should know this. Then I pause and I say, why? Because I'm outwardly focused. The more inwardly I am focused, the more beautifully I grow inside. So this is what I wanted to share. And I work with a lot of women, and I just feel like when any gender, when we see that they are very aggressive, they have equality issue and all. Why is that? Why is that? Because they have not tapped inside. They have not fulfilled what they want. Yeah. So yoga opens this eye, that third eye, to see that, oh, okay, you know, nobody can make you happy. Nobody in this world can make you happy other than you. Nobody can make you suffer other than you. So if if anyone is a practitioner of yoga, I think this is where I'm still not there, but I just keep coming back there, and it's like going there and coming back, going there. But it's such a good glimpse if I get there for a few seconds also, without that judgment mind, I see myself growing as a person. I don't compare myself with any other teachers. I don't compare that, oh, I don't know this, I don't know that. Yes, it's an open, this is my way of thinking the world is this. Your way of thinking the world, everyone's world is inside them. And we can make it really look different and work on it how we want it to be looked. So I just wanted to share this, and hopefully I didn't prepare anything, but then I thought, okay, let me talk with my heart, because that is how I share my things. So thank you for inviting me again.
By listening your presentation, I was recalling Yehudi Menuhin, who was a person who brought yoga to West, and he always says that yoga is a yardstick of inner peace. And I can also recall Indra Devi, who was a first lady who brought yoga to West, and she taught yoga to some of the legends like Greta Garbo, Eva Gergebor, Marlene Monroe. So it's something which which is very important. And somewhere Indra Devi. Indra Devi is also, she was born as a Eurogeny Petrosyan in Russia, and escaped to Berlin with her mother after the Bolsheviks came to power in 1917, where she became an actress. And she was very fascinated with yoga and Rabindranath Tagore. And then she came to Mysore and became the disciple of Yoga Guru Trimulai in Mysore, and changed herself into a status of a teacher of yoga. And then she became famous with Indra Devi. But the way, somebody studied Indra Devi's centers and found that her yoga also some way empowered third wave of second wave of feminism in West. So yoga has a very deeper realization. So I request now Professor Priya Ranjan to also share some of his reflection.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, as the time applies. Thank you. Can you please give me the sharing permissions?
Just yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now you can share your presentations.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on which part of the world you are in. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. So what I am going to look at this as a little bit from the technical and hard science perspective. What I mean by that there are a lot of claims about yoga, starting from ancient literature to modern literature. We are going to examine some of those things in both qualitative and quantitative manner. For example, if we say is that, we get relaxation after yoga, how do we quantify that? How do we measure that? So we do actually real experiments to understand a person's, mental status and comfort before yoga and after yoga. Okay. So I'll slightly try to steer towards them, and I'll do some, genesis, how it might have started, what does it entail, and how it actually interfaces with so-called modern science and technology, where we actually have real and hard evidence for every claim yoga makes. And a lot more experiments are in order to actually give a firm scientific footing to the claims made by yoga, yogic processes, tantra, and related developments, right? So what I want to say this, in Hindi, that no vikas ke liye yoga aur tantra. योग एक बहुत ही पुरानी प्रक्रिया है, एक बहुत ही पुराना विज्ञान है. उसको हम how do we use this, leverage this for the modern times and for our future, which is yet to come. So the way to think about this work is that we start from explorations in an ancient language and build hard proof so that it has a backing of modern rigorous science, that this practice has a lot of fruits to offer us, and we can benefit this. Okay, benefit from it. So let's move a little bit, exploring in the past, and then I'll slightly try to transition it towards modernity. Some of my own students are working on this, and some extremely interesting, experiments I've been thinking about yoga and tantra. So first, yoga. What does yoga mean, right? So yoga comes from the yuj dhatu in Sanskrit. Okay, And that's how yoga means. Yoga literally means integrating everything, which makes sense, right? We have a lot of sensory and, activity faculties in our body. And if we work in an integrated fashion with all of them, we are doing yoga. Yoga just means putting it all together. What it means is that we are using the information captured by eyes, we are using the information captured by our tongue, we are using the information captured by our skin and everything else, right? Then Yoga Sutra of Patanjali says is that Yoga Shit Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is restraint of the activities of mind. Now, restraint should not be construed here in a negative fashion. All he is trying to say is that we need to do yoga to have our mind disciplined. It should not be an uncontrolled ocean of turbulence. It should be devoted to the betterment of humanity, right? That's why we need to restrain our mental turbulent waves and put it at the service of, where it matters. Now, Bhagavad Gita says, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, right? So, evenness of mind, calmness of mind, peace of mind, mindfulness of mind is what yoga is. All they're trying to say is that Gita has this concept of Samasthiti Pragya. What Samasthiti Pragya means is that you stay the same whether things are going good or things are going bad. You win or you lose. It doesn't matter. You have reached a state where everything is same. What matters is doing the right deed, the karma. Now the last one, as you might know, this is also a motto of IIT Kharagpur, Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam, right? So what that means is that yoga is skillfulness. It's a skill. It's doing something in a stylish and, efficient manner, optimal manner, right? So yoga has multiple perspectives. Our reverend, rishis and maharshis and many deep thinkers have thought about these things, and they have defined and redefined the yoga itself. And it has a very happening sort of history, and it has helped humanity wherever it is possible. So we'll take all these multiple perspectives and try to make sense what yoga has to offer to us and how we can verify those claims rigorously. Because yoga is not just a shop where we are selling something that if you do yoga, this will happen. Rather, it all has a firm footing. It has a pedestal. It has a scientific and technological method using which we can cross-check that actually how does yoga and yogic practices affect us. Now, I'll not get into detail. These are mostly, what we call Arsha Sahitya, means the literature generated by our rishis. And, I salute their tremendous contribution and their path, finding efforts to build new roads into hitherto unknown, world of ignorance. So, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, everything is yoga. It's all putting together. It's all integration. But integration is being done with different objective. There can be objective of action, there can be objective of devotion, there can be objective of knowledge, there can be objective of becoming a royalty, a good royalty that is, and ruling with, people-friendly way. Then physical yoga is there, and also there are meditative postures and all that stuff. I'll not get into those details because most of it, Bihar School of Yoga will tell you way better than I can tell you because those guys are the real experts. I'll tell you where my work comes into the picture. This is again some review, meaning eightfold paths of Patanjali, right? Yam, Niyam, Ashan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. And one of the things I think is missing here is Swadhyay, which is also very important, which means self-study. So all those things come into the picture. You can see the asans, body postures, and why we need that meditative, relaxing, cultural, etc., etc. Okay, and if you think about it at a deeper level, the postures and the Indian classical dance, the gap actually closes. A lot of things which are done in Indian classical dance, if you think carefully, they resemble almost yogic postures. And I think, that's a deliberate deed in the sense is that once you dance like that, you should feel good about it. Dance should not, disturb you. It should, relax you. It should help you feel easy, right? It should help you meditate. So a lot of those, similes and similarities you will see. And here is a whole sort of list of these things. Again, Bihar School of Yoga is far more competent in these things, and they will do a much better job. Now let's coming to these things. So a lot of claims are there that yoga helps our brain in many ways. Now just a brief 30-second introduction of brain, how we understand it, because it's very important that we understand where yoga is hitting us, what yoga is doing for us. Now just coming on the related note, Tantra. What does Tantra mean, right? Tantra means a system. And our neurons in our Rishi literature, Sanskrit literature, are known as Tantrikaye. So Tantrikaye together, a network of Tantrikaye or neurons together make a Tantra. So a system of neurons is what a Tantra is. And that's why it is being studied. And that Tantra is affected by the process of yoga. That's why yoga and Tantra both are sort of mentioned together. So this is the sort of our basic structure of brain, right? And you will find a lot of claims in multiple morphological studies that lots of positive effects are there on our brain because of multiple yogic asanas and yogic processes, right? Like what are those? So you can see effect of blood, morphological effects, right? Effect on neural activation. What does neural activation mean? It means is that a part of your brain which is not active, which you may not be able to use, now you can use it. It's like, finding a bigger CPU, right? Effects on functional connectivity. Now your neurons are connecting in a far more richer way than earlier. What that means is that you can be way more creative without stressing yourself. Okay? Effect on neurotransmitters and metabolites and so on and so forth. So again, this is another whole gamut of things which cognitive people, psychologists, and neuroscience will tell you better. I'm just trying to hint at some of these results so that you try to make a connection that yoga is not just a process which was written by our rishis. It actually modern verification and validation that it does a lot of positive things in a very, very quantifiable and provable manner. And some of those I'm showing you. Next, I'll tell you how do we achieve these things? How do we really understand the impact of yoga and similar processes on our Tantra and Tantrikaye? And, how do we measure it and make sense of it, right? So again, you can see that the cerebral blood flow is greater in the prefrontal cortex after yoga program, which suggests a training effect that enhances the activation of that brain area. Now, this should tell you is that if the blood flow is more in the cerebral part of brain, your brain is going to be healthy. You are going to be less stressful and you can think deeper thoughts. So there is no surprise that our yogis were tremendous contributors in any walk of life. Whether, you look into economics, you look into relations of men and women, you look into, how to run a country, we knew almost everything. Nagarjuna, who was a Buddhist monk actually, Nagarjuna, actually had foundations of quantum theory, quantum physics. How did they do these things? How did they achieve? Because they could somehow, steer their brain towards deeper thoughts, research, new ideas, innovations, and so forth. They were truly pathfinders. Okay, and you can see that for all of them, yoga is a common process. Now, how do we measure it? I'll now jump towards the modernity. So you can see this is what is known as EEG. Okay, and the user, who is in the red cap, actually looks at the screen where visual cues are given, and then all the data is collected using a data acquisition software in the laptop. Okay, and there is a EEG amplifier. Because the voltage generated in a couple of millivolts, so it has to be amplified to process properly. And this is what is known as 64, electrode EEG cap. And EEG is very good in time resolution of understanding brain activity. It is very bad in actually space resolution. So there is another device which complements that, and that is FNIRS, which is shown here. Now, what we do is that you use both these devices to understand the effect of yoga and Tantra on human mind, on human cognition, on human neuroactivity, right? So I'll give you one example and one experiment I have been thinking about it, that we talk about, Sirsasana, right? Going upside down. Now, why would you think that our rishis were doing that? I kept thinking about it, and I was reading about Alzheimer. One of my own theory is that Alzheimer is happening because enough blood is not irrigating our neurons, especially as we get old. What happens is that due to the nature of gravity, as we walk vertically, it is possible that as we age, only a fewer amount of blood is reaching into our brain, and that is making a lot of our neurons defunct. Now, how do we test this theory, right? So we can design an experiment where we can take EEG of a person before Sirsasana and after Sirsasana and see if Sirsasana makes a difference. That will sort of validate all the ancient to modern claims about Sirsasana. It's not much of a rocket science because we can measure mental activity, mental stress, peace, and all that stuff. And for that, we have two devices which I'm showing you right here. And they plug right into yogic activities and Tantra. So what I'm talking about is yoga, not just as an ancient and motivational and inspiring science for meditation. I'm talking about yoga as a real cure for modern cognitive problems. And a provable cure. I told you Alzheimer, one of them, it can be epilepsy. It can be stress of modern days, modern times. We all live in cities. We all have stress. Someone's boss is not happy. Someone's wife is not happy. Someone's son is not happy, right? So all these things, at least we can understand that what can be the reason why my brain is so stressed. There are suicidal tendencies. Those can be reflected into EEG and FNIRS, right? We can quantify learning. We can show that actually people who do yoga, they can do math better. And this is not just a fable. All right, so I'll try to, in the interest of time, I'll try to move forward. And I have one of my collaborators who was actually my classmate in Netrahat Vidyalaya. He is currently in Oxford Brookes, and he's a psychologist. So what he does is that he collects all this data for me of EEG for both yogic and tantric processes, cognitive processes, learning processes. And me and my students, we being engineers and computational people, we analyze this data, okay? So here is my student Shanu Sharma. She is going to get her PhD anytime soon. And two basic problems she started with in the exploration of EEG. For example, how yoga and tantra related activities can be helpful to the children who are addicted to games. And that requires a medium to measure the impact of addiction and de-addiction after yoga and tantric activity. And that can only be done using EEG and FNIRS. So you can see that she has a lot of work actually going on in these areas. And she is now almost an EEG expert. A very, very complex signals she measures and detects the changes and so on. Second is Anju Mishra. She has similar interest, and she's also looking for, convolutional neural networks for image classification. What is the impact of, again, yoga and tantra on our EEG, FNIRS? And another thing she's interested in, impact of visual media. How do our mental configuration, the configuration of neurons, the tantra, and the yogic processes help us make sense of interpretation, make sense of visual media, and how do we interpret them? And all that can be quantified using hard science, using the devices I showed you, EEG and FNIRS. Now I'll give you a couple of simple case studies, so that you actually see that the claims which are being made about yoga, they all are neither bogus nor fake. What I'm here trying to talk to you is all peer-reviewed science and still stands the test of time. Okay, so one paper you can look at it yourself, and anybody who wants these things, I can share it with them. Workload regulation by Sudarshan Kriya. And what we do is that here we measure not only EEG, but also we measure heart activity using ECG perspective. So how we can regulate our workload by doing Sudarshan Kriya? How can Sudarshan Kriya can make us, more active and efficient in our daily activity? Okay, how can a pranayam that stimulates physical, mental, emotional, and social being can help us living a better life? And again, this is a proof where hard data has been collected, hard analysis has been done and is rigorous. So I'll not get into the details. I just wanted to hint at some of these studies which are modern. This study is done in 2017, and you can look into all the details, and then you can tell yourself if you should go for Sudarshan Kriya Yoga or not. Second, okay, so EEG signatures change during unilateral yogi nasal breathing. What they have discovered is that if we breathe through our right nasal hole, it leads to stimulation, it leads to excitement, it leads to enthusiasm. Whereas if we breathe through our left nasal hole, it leads to reduction of stress, it leads to peace, it leads to de-stressing of our mind. And this is a very, very important insight to understand. How did they know? And this has been verified using EEG signatures. This is something yogi knew all along. It's for the scientific people who are discovering it in this era, a little too late. Again, Scientific Reports is a very, very reputed journal by Nature Group. I don't need to say much about it, and study is open, it stands. Feel free to read it, criticize it, and make better suggestions to improve it. Yet another milestone for yogic activities where we are still discovering the sort of tip of the iceberg, right? Now, here are Tai Chi Yoga effects on anxiety, healthcare, EEG, and math computation. What this study is saying is that your mathematical capabilities will increase if you do yoga. Okay, and a lot of adults participated in this. A rigorous data analysis has been done, and conclusion is that yoga is very good for you. And if you do it, especially if you happen to be scientific or medical professional, which nowadays a lot of people are joining these jobs, they're becoming engineers and doctors, yoga will help you perform your job better. Okay. Now, just to come to my own work with my students, Shanu Sharma, my collaborator, Ashwini Kumar Dubey, and so on. What we are trying to understand is that how can visual media be interpreted properly by a person who is doing yoga and who is not doing yoga? What we are trying to understand is that what is the impact of yogic activity on human attention? And we are trying to understand that using EEG signal, as I showed you earlier. Next paper is neural correlates of affective content. Okay, so again, we are trying to say is that how can yogic activities, meditation can help us do the video tagging better, and how our EEG is the sort of medium to accomplish that. So we're looking at interaction of the work, which is the visual tagging, the medium, which is the EEG, and to get myself ready for the job, that is yoga and tantra. Okay. So a lot of very, very intriguing scientific discoveries are yet to be made. In all honesty, I know very little about this. I'll be very honest with you. We are just scratching the surface. We are not even scratching the surface properly. Our brain is like a sea, sometimes peace, sometimes turbulent. A lot of waves come and go. And the best part is that we are diverse. We all think differently. We all, understand things differently. And that's the whole excitement of our scientific work, right? Munde mati vinna. So that's the note where I would like to dedicate this work to everybody, who is interested in mental peace and want to sort of get the bliss of doing yogic activities and get the best fruit of Tantra. Thank you. I truly appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Priya Ranjan. Very interesting. And I feel it is one of the best presentations of Swadhyasa Chakra Dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now I request respected participants to share some of their reflections. So to initiate the discussion session, I would request Dr. Gyan Gului to share some of his reflections.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was really very interesting. I am not an expert, but well, there are some suggestions which are very important for my work, because there is now, but only the last years, really in the very, very last years, there is now a tendency to interpret some aspects of ancient Greek philosophy, and in particular Plato, under the perspective, with the perspective of yoga, that is, of some concepts of yoga. This is a new perspective interpretation, because it is really of this century. And it is a very interesting perspective, because in my opinion has opened new ways of interpreting these aspects of these parts of ancient Greek philosophy. And in particular, some dialogues of Plato, like Phaedo or Phaedrus, in relation to the analogies which Plato has to the Indian philosophy and to a common, so to speak, corpus of ideas. And on the other hand, really the application of some concepts of yoga to dialogues like Phaedo has allowed to open new perspective for the interpretation of some points, some passages of Phaedo, in which, in my opinion at least, the conception of the new dimension which Plato is searching for, a new dimension apart from and except for the sensibility, that is a new dimension of the individual, with which the individual can have contact, to which the individual can have access, but of which the individual is not immediately aware. And this aspect of Plato was nearly completely left out of attention. It was privileged the way of interpreting Plato as a gnoseologist, an epistemologist, so to speak, and not in the way of interpreting him as, yes, epistemologist, but of another kind of science, which is much, much more similar to the knowledge of the yoga and to the attitude to life which yoga can give. Therefore, while listening, I was thinking at some passages of Plato, and I received, so to speak, the confirmation that this is an interesting way of interpreting ancient Greek philosophy, in particular Plato. And therefore, I would like to thank very much for the three thinkers, or the three speakers of today, because they have given me really very, very important suggestions on which I've been working, and on which I will work in the future weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you again. Now I request Minati Pradhanji.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you are audible. Please say.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers for very incredible and enlightening session. So I don't know, there are star words what to speak. Just I want to tell two sentences. One thing is, from yoga, it has got two different dimensions. The body benefits from its movement, and the mind benefits from its stillness. That is really marvelous. And this Ananta was talking about copyrights. What today our Prime Minister said. First, I was thinking from our childhood onwards, it was like some Muni Samaj used to do some yoga, practice some yoga, and some people used to do something. They were treating it as if it is their copyright. unless you are into that Muni Samaj, you cannot see the person who is practicing yoga. And still now I don't understand why that was hidden from the people. Is there any logic or any science? I mean, yoga is so beneficial, it should be made available to everyone. Thankfully, we are now all accessible to that. So, I have one query. Actually, Professor Pradhan was telling about that sign language recognition for the hard of hearing people. I mean, would it be possible to explain a little bit more about it? How it would be, I mean, regarding that matter. Thank you.
I request Professor Priya Ranjan ji.
Yeah, so
I think you have asked the question, yes.
yeah, can you repeat the question in the interest of audience so that everybody understands the question clearly?
Hello, one of the slide had that sign language recognition for the hard of hearing people. So I
Yes.
would like to know a little bit more about it. How, I mean, how it is connected to yoga, or what is it really?
Very good, very good, very good. So what we are trying to do, Pradhan ji, Minati ji, is that we are trying to understand how our brain understands those symbols. Okay, for that we look at EEG, right? And what we want to understand that does a person who is actually doing yoga and tantra understands those symbols better than a person who doesn't do it? And that is reflected in the EEG measurement.
So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So you are telling if somebody is a practitioner, I mean the sign language teacher or a mother of or parent or the caretaker of the hearing impaired people, they will, I mean, do you take their experience into the measure or not?
So we have all sorts of people we are experimenting with. All broadly we are saying is that if you are doing yoga, your brain becomes sharper. Your capabilities to recognize things, understand things, and interpret things becomes better than a person who is not doing yoga and meditative activities, tantra and all that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And why this is important? Because we are not saying what we feel, or we are not saying what we have read in our books. We are saying is that here is a modern way of understanding the impact of yoga, which is EEG and FNIRS, which is what everybody, all the whole world around the world uses, and that is, you know, completely acceptable to any scientist. So that's why we are taking modern methods and trying to highlight the capabilities of this ancient practice, that this is just not yet another Indian voodoo or Kala Jadoo and all that stuff. This is the real thing, and it actually helps you lead a better life.
Thank you. Maybe final word from Ananta bhai, and then we'll move Archana Mohan ji. Ananta bhai, are you there? As he is taking some time, I request.
I'm
yes.
here. So thank you. It has been a very interlinked, beautiful conversations, you know, science and experience, and as Archana ji was saying, and Priya Ranjan ji, and what Minati was saying about movement of the body and stillness of mind. That is so significant. At the same time, there is a perennial dialectic of movement and stillness. So moving towards what can be called a moving stillness and still movement. What we call as aporias in philosophy, like the great philosopher Derrida speaks about aporia. So in a way, yoga helps us to combine stillness and movement. In Isopanishad, one of the description of Isa divine is so ejate, so no ejate. The divine moves and the divine does not move. So just a few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana Mohan ji.
I just want to add the practical. I just really enjoyed all the science behind it, and it was really nice. And I have read few of the stuff here and there, but it was so good. I just wanted to add one thing that practically, because I live like a yogic life, and I eat in a way too. And I have a teacher, so I follow the Dincharya. And my Dincharya, to other people, it looks very tough, but it has helped me in to focus on things what I want to learn. So I myself is not a very fast learner. I'm a slow learner. So if I want to read something, so I was always thinking that, oh, I am a slow learner. But now I see that anything which I am really interested in, with my Dincharya of how I eat, how I move, how I speak, how I interact with the world, I see that what he was talking about, that it has improved my, I should not name it lifestyle, but it has improved the way I see things. And again, in Dincharya, the way, the sleeping time, everything comes in, the meditation, everything comes in. So I just wanted to add, if any of you who are really, who looked at the scientific side of it and want to do it, follow a Dincharya, which is very, very important. Wake up on time. The party is good, everything is good. Mix food and eat food, everything is good, and you can do it sometime. But the thing is, the more you would start doing it, it's not that I will not die. It's not that I will not get sick. It's not that I will not get disease. I'm not feeling too well at this moment. But the thing is, I see it not as a suffering. I see it, can I do better without thinking of the end result that, oh, I will get better. Yeah. And so I just wanted to finish this with follow a Dincharya. And India has got so many gurus and teachers who are amazing. If you can't do it, have a teacher who can guide you, and just trust them, have faith, because people keep on changing teacher to teacher to teacher, but it will move you. And that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. I request Minati Pradhanji to offer vote of thanks.
Thank you. I am Minati Pradhan on behalf of Sadhya Sahachakra and Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming. Would like to thank our today's chief speaker, Professor Kumar Giri, Archana Mohan ma'am, and Professor Priya Ranjan sir for their very insightful and enlightening presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ananta bhai, and thank you, ma'am. And today I would like to thank today's all the participants, Professor Ganluji and other MD Chandar Sahab, so many other Sudharedi ma'am was there. So many participants being present with us and learning with us. Thank you all. Please pardon me if I have forgotten anybody's name. I would also like to thank all our platform, Facebook platform users, so in Zoom platform users. Thank you all and good night.
Hello, Minati. If possible, you can put your video. Our panelists can see you for a moment.
Yeah. I'm damn tired. Thank you all. Thank you all and good night. We are grateful.